Princess Zarathel of the Velnari Empire stood at the massive crystalline windows of her palace tower. Watching the twin suns of Velnara cast their purple and golden light across the sprawling capital city below. Her forearms were folded in contemplation, her silver skin shimmering with the bioluminescent patterns that marked her as royalty. At 200 years old, she was considered young by her species standards, yet the weight of expectation pressed down upon her like a physical force. The Velnari were an ancient race, their empire spanning 12 star systems and encompassing dozens of subjugated species. They prided themselves on their technological superiority and cultural refinement, viewing themselves as the rightful rulers of their corner of the galaxy. Zarathel had been groomed from birth to continue this legacy, educated in military strategy, diplomacy, and the art of maintaining control over lesser beings. Her father, Emperor Kethvar, had summoned her to the throne room that morning with news that would change everything. A new species had been discovered in a previously unexplored sector. A primitive race called humans, who had barely achieved faster than light travel. Intelligence reports suggested they possessed nothing of value except a small, unremarkable planet they called Earth. "They are perfect for our newest expansion," the Emperor had declared, his voice resonating through the vast chamber. "Young, inexperienced, with no significant allies, you will lead the preliminary contact mission, daughter. Consider it your final test before assuming greater responsibilities." Zarathel had accepted without question. As was expected, the mission seemed routine, almost beneath her skills. The plan was simple. Establish contact under the guise of peaceful first meeting, assess their military capabilities, identify their weaknesses, and prepare for eventual annexation. It was a pattern the Velnari had perfected over millennia. The journey to Earth took 3 standard cycles aboard the Imperial reconnaissance vessel Dominion's Edge. Zarathel used the time to study everything their long-range scouts had gathered about humanity. The reports painted them as a chaotic, short-lived species, prone to internal conflicts and primitive emotional responses. They had barely unified their own planet and showed little promise for technological advancement beyond their current level. What puzzled her were the inconsistencies in the data. Humans seemed capable of remarkable adaptability and innovation when faced with challenges, yet they also engaged in seemingly pointless conflicts over resources and ideological differences. Their art and literature suggested deep emotional complexity, but their political systems appeared inefficient and constantly changing. The Dominion's Edge dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of Earth's solar system, its advanced cloaking systems rendering it invisible to human detection methods. Zarathel ordered a careful approach, maintaining standard observation protocols as they moved toward the blue-green world that served as humanity's cradle. From orbit, Earth appeared beautiful in its chaotic diversity. Unlike the carefully ordered worlds of the Velnari Empire, where climate control and terraforming had created perfect symmetry, Earth was a patchwork of wild weather patterns, diverse ecosystems, and seemingly random geographical features. Cities sprawled organically across continents, connected by networks of transportation that followed no apparent logical design. "Princess," reported her tactical officer, "we're detecting a small human vessel approaching our position. Sensors indicate it's some kind of research craft, not military." Zarathel moved to the command display, studying the approaching ship. It was tiny by Velnari standards, barely the size of a shuttle, and appeared to be conducting routine scientific observations of an asteroid field. The vessel showed no signs of having detected their presence. "A perfect opportunity for first contact," she mused. "Prepare the translation protocols and lower our cloak. We'll make contact with this single vessel first, away from their main population centers." The human ship's name was the Scientific Explorer, and it carried a crew of 5 researchers studying near-Earth asteroids for mining potential. As the massive Velnari vessel suddenly appeared before them, the humans' communications channels exploded with confused chatter and emergency calls. Zarathel opened a communication channel, her words automatically translated by their advanced linguistic computers. "Attention, human vessel. I am Princess Zarathel of the Velnari Empire. Do not be alarmed. We come in peace and wish to establish communication with your species. The response came several minutes later, during which Zarathel could only assume the humans were dealing with shock and panic. When the reply finally arrived, it was from a single voice, calmer than she had expected. "This is Dr. Marcus Chen, mission commander of the Scientific Explorer. We welcome contact with your people, Princess Zarathel. This is an historic moment for humanity. How may we assist you?" Something in the human's tone intrigued her. Despite facing a technologically superior alien species, his voice carried no fear or submission, only curiosity and cautious optimism. She had expected terror, pleading, or perhaps aggressive posturing. Instead, this Dr. Chen sounded almost excited. "We request permission to dock with your vessel for face-to-face meeting," Zarathel replied. "Our preliminary scans indicate your ship lacks adequate life support for my species. We will provide appropriate environmental accommodations. Of course, we'll prepare to receive you." Dr. Chen, out. An hour later, Zarathel found herself aboard the cramped human research vessel, her environmental suit allowing her to breathe in the strange oxygen-nitrogen atmosphere. The human crew had gathered in their main laboratory, 5 individuals who stared at her with expressions of wonder and nervousness. Dr. Marcus Chen stepped forward, a man of medium height, with graying hair and intelligent brown eyes behind simple optical lenses. He extended his hand in what her briefings had identified as a human greeting gesture. "Welcome aboard, Princess Zarathel. I'm Dr. Chen, xenobiologist and mission commander. These are my colleagues: Dr. Sarah Martinez, our astrophysicist; Dr. James Wilson, geologist; Dr. Lisa Park, engineer; and Dr. Ahmed Hassan, communications specialist." Each human offered their own greeting, and Zarathel was surprised by their composure. In her experience, first contact with primitive species typically involved either cowering submission or violent resistance. These humans showed neither reaction. "Your species adapts to unexpected circumstances with remarkable calm," she observed, accepting Dr. Chen's handshake with one of her 4 hands. Dr. Chen smiled, an expression her briefings had explained, but which seemed more complex in person. "Humans are naturally curious, Princess. The discovery that we're not alone in the universe is overwhelming, yes, but it's also the greatest scientific discovery in our history. We've dreamed of this moment for generations." Over the following hours, Zarathel found herself engaged in conversations unlike any she had experienced. Instead of the usual pattern of intimidation and submission, the humans asked endless questions about Velnari culture, technology, and history. They shared their own knowledge freely, explaining human science and philosophy with enthusiasm. Dr. Chen particularly intrigued her. While the other humans focused on technical aspects of first contact, he seemed more interested in understanding her as an individual. He asked about her personal experiences, her thoughts on exploration and discovery, her feelings about representing her entire species in this moment. "What drives the Velnari to explore space?" he asked during one of their conversations. "Is it resource acquisition? Scientific curiosity? The desire to spread your culture?" Sun. 1. The question caught Zarathel off guard. No one had ever asked her to examine the motivations behind her empire's expansion. "We bring order to chaos," she replied, repeating the standard imperial doctrine. "Lesser species benefit from our guidance and protection." Dr. Chen nodded thoughtfully. "And what do you personally find most rewarding about that mission?" Again, the question forced her to think beyond prepared responses. I suppose I have never considered personal rewards. Service to the Empire is its own purpose. But you must have personal interests, things that fascinate you beyond duty? What made you want to lead first contact missions? For the first time in her life, Zarathel found herself uncertain how to answer. The human's perspective seemed to assume that individuals had independent motivations and desires separate from their social roles. In Velnari culture, personal fulfillment came through perfect service to the established order. As their conversations continued, she began to notice other strange aspects of human behavior. They disagreed with each other frequently, yet remained collegial. They admitted uncertainty about their own knowledge and actively sought to learn from her, rather than pretending expertise they didn't possess. Most puzzling of all, they seemed to value her opinions and experiences as unique insights, not simply as data points about Velnari capabilities. Dr. Chen showed her human art and literature on his personal datapad, explaining concepts like individual expression, creative interpretation, and personal emotional response. The very idea that individuals might create something purely for the joy of creation, without practical purpose or imperial approval, was foreign to everything she had been taught. "This painting," he said, showing her an image of swirling colors and abstract shapes, "was created by an artist who wanted to express his feelings about a sunset he once saw. It serves no functional purpose, provides no strategic advantage, but thousands of humans find meaning in it." "What kind of meaning?" Zarathel asked, genuinely curious. "Different meaning for each person who sees it. Some see beauty, others see sadness, still others see hope, or memory, or possibility. The artist gave us something to think about, feel about, interpret in our own way." The concept was revolutionary. In Velnari culture, art existed to glorify the empire and reinforce social order. The idea that it could be personal, interpretive, and individually meaningful challenged everything she understood about civilization and purpose. As the day progressed, Zarathel realized that her entire mission framework was becoming complicated. These humans didn't fit the pattern of primitive species awaiting imperial guidance. They were complex, innovative, and possessed a kind of resilience that came not from technology or military might, but from their ability to find meaning and purpose in unexpected places. When it came time to return to her ship, Dr. Chen made an unexpected request. "Princess, would you be willing to continue our cultural exchange? Perhaps you could visit Earth, see more of human civilization. We have so much more to show you, and I believe we have much to learn from each other." Standing in the airlock between the two vessels, Zarathel looked back at the human crew. 5 individuals from a species her empire considered primitive, yet they had challenged more of her fundamental assumptions in one day than centuries of imperial education. "I will consider your request, Dr. Chen," she replied. "This has been educational." As she returned to the Dominion's edge, Zarathel realized that something fundamental had shifted in her understanding of the universe. For the first time in her life, she found herself questioning not just tactics and strategy, but the very foundations of everything she had been taught to believe about civilization, purpose, and what it meant to lead. 3 days after her initial contact with the human research vessel, Zarathel made a decision that would have been unthinkable just a week earlier. Instead of returning to Velnari space with her preliminary report, she accepted Dr. Chen's invitation to visit Earth. The choice went against every protocol in the Imperial Handbook, but something about the human's perspective had awakened a curiosity she couldn't ignore. Her tactical staff expressed concern about the deviation from mission parameters, but Zarathel reminded them that thorough reconnaissance required understanding the target species' capabilities and mindset. She convinced herself that visiting Earth was simply an extension of her intelligence-gathering duties, though deep down, she knew her motivations were becoming more complex. The Dominion's edge took position in high Earth orbit, hidden behind the planet's moon, while Zarathel prepared for surface contact. Dr. Chen had coordinated with Earth's various governments to arrange what humanity was calling the first official diplomatic meeting between species. The location chosen was the International Space Cooperation Center in Geneva, neutral territory that represented humanity's collaborative scientific efforts. Descending to Earth in a small atmospheric craft, Zarathel experienced her first direct exposure to human weather patterns. Unlike the carefully controlled environments of Velnari worlds, Earth's atmosphere was chaotic and unpredictable. Clouds formed and dispersed randomly, winds shifted without apparent logic, and the temperature fluctuated in ways that seemed inefficient and wasteful. Yet, as she flew over the European continent, she found herself fascinated by the diversity of landscapes below. Forests grew in natural patterns that followed no design principles. Rivers carved meandering paths that served no apparent optimization function, and mountains rose in dramatic formations that seemed to exist purely for their own sake. It was beautiful in a way that challenged her understanding of proper planetary management. The landing facility was surrounded by representatives from dozens of human nations, each dressed in different ceremonial attire that reflected their diverse cultures. Zarathel had studied human political structures and found them baffling in their inefficiency. Yet seeing the assembled delegates in person, she began to perceive something her briefings had missed. Despite their differences, these humans had somehow managed to coordinate this moment without a central authority forcing compliance. Dr. Chen greeted her personally as she emerged from her craft, flanked by officials she recognized from their diplomatic files. United Nations Secretary-General Elena Vasquez, a woman whose calm authority reminded Zarathel of imperial administrators, yet who seemed to lead through consensus rather than decree. Dr. Sarah Okafor, director of the International Science Foundation, whose reputation for innovative thinking preceded her, and others whose presence represented humanity's attempt to present their best face to the galaxy. "Welcome to Earth, Princess Zarathel," Dr. Chen said, offering the same handshake greeting she remembered from their first meeting. "We're honored by your visit and eager to share our world with you." The formal ceremonies were unlike anything in Velnari protocol. Instead of demonstrations of power and submission, the humans presented gifts that represented their cultural achievements. Art from various continents, musical compositions played by a diverse orchestra, scientific instruments that showcased their technological innovations, and samples of literature translated into mathematical languages they hoped her people could understand. What struck Zarathel most powerfully was the collaborative nature of the presentation. No single human leader took credit for their species' accomplishments. Instead, they spoke of collective achievement, shared discovery, and the contributions of countless individuals whose names would never be known, but whose work had built the foundation for everything they were sharing. Over the following days, Dr. Chen served as her primary guide through human civilization. Rather than showing her their military capabilities or resource production facilities, as she had expected, he took her to places that revealed the human spirit. They visited universities where young humans learned not just practical skills but how to think, question, and imagine. They attended concerts where musicians created temporary beauty that existed only in the moment and in memory. The visit to the Louvre Museum in Paris proved particularly transformative. Standing before paintings and sculptures created by humans across thousands of years, Zarathel began to understand something that had no equivalent in Velnari culture. These artifacts served no strategic purpose, provided no technological advantage, yet humans had preserved them across centuries as treasures of incalculable value. "This piece," Dr. Chen explained, standing before a painting of a woman with an enigmatic smile, "has inspired countless interpretations, theories, and emotions. People travel across continents just to stand where we're standing now and experience whatever it makes them feel." "But what is its function?" Zarathel asked, genuinely puzzled. Dr. Chen paused thoughtfully. "Maybe that's the wrong question. Perhaps the better question is, how does it serve the human spirit? What does it mean to individual people who encounter it?" As they moved through the galleries, Zarathel found herself drawn to pieces that depicted human struggles and triumphs. Paintings of wars that showed not glory, but sacrifice and loss. Sculptures that celebrated not conquest but resilience. Art that somehow captured emotions she had no words for in her own language. "Your species creates beauty from suffering," she observed, studying a painting that depicted refugees fleeing conflict. "We create meaning from experience," Dr. Chen replied. "Humans need to understand not just what happens to us, but what it means, how it connects to something larger than ourselves. Art helps us process experiences that are too complex for simple analysis." They visited a children's hospital, where young humans faced medical challenges with courage that amazed her. Velnari medical technology could have easily cured many of these conditions, Yet what impressed Zarathel was not the limitations of human medicine, but the way families supported each other through difficulty. Parents who sacrificed everything for children who might not survive. Medical staff who continued caring even when treatments failed. Children who found joy and laughter despite pain and uncertainty. Why do they continue to fight when the odds are poor? She asked Dr. Chen as they watched a young girl paint pictures despite her obvious illness. Because the fight itself has meaning, he replied. Because hope and love and determination matter, regardless of outcomes. Because choosing to care for each other is what makes us human. The concept was foreign, yet compelling. Velnari culture valued efficiency and success above all else. Efforts that didn't produce desired results were considered wasted resources. Yet these humans seemed to find value in the attempt itself, in the connections formed through shared struggle, in the meaning created through choosing compassion over pragmatism. Their next stop was the International Refugee Center, where humans who had fled conflicts in various regions worked to rebuild their lives. Zarathel expected to find defeat and dependency, but instead discovered determination and mutual support that functioned without formal authority structures. Refugees from different cultures and backgrounds had created informal networks of assistance, sharing resources and skills based on nothing more than shared humanity. She met a woman named Amara, who had fled war in her homeland with nothing but her children and a determination to build something better. Despite losing everything familiar, Amara had learned new languages, acquired new skills, and was now helping other refugees navigate their transitions. When Zarathel asked what motivated her continued efforts, Amara's answer was simple yet profound. My children need to see that broken things can be rebuilt, that starting over is possible, that human beings take care of each other. If I give up, what kind of world am I leaving for them? That evening, Dr. Chen took her to his own home, a modest dwelling that reflected human concepts of personal space and individual identity. Unlike Velnari residential complexes that were designed for maximum efficiency and uniformity, human homes were expressions of personality, memory, and aspiration. Dr. Chen's walls were covered with photographs of family, friends, colleagues, and moments that had shaped his life. Books lined his shelves, representing thousands of human thoughts and experiences he had chosen to keep accessible. Musical instruments sat ready for personal expression, and artwork reflected his individual aesthetic preferences. This is your private domain, Zarathel observed, studying the accumulated evidence of one human's journey through life. It's more than that, Dr. Chen replied, preparing tea in a ritual that seemed to hold personal significance. It's where I remember who I am when I'm not being a scientist or a diplomat or any other role. It's where I connect with the people and experiences that have made me who I am. Over dinner with Dr. Chen's family, Zarathel experienced human relationships in their most intimate form. His wife, Maria, was an artist whose paintings captured moments of everyday beauty that most Velnari would consider insignificant. Their teenage daughter, Anna, challenged her father's opinions with a confidence that would have been unthinkable in Velnari family structures, yet the disagreement seemed to strengthen rather than threaten their bond. Anna wants to study xenobiology now that she knows aliens exist, Maria explained with obvious pride. She thinks she might want to work toward diplomatic contact with other species. The universe just got infinitely more interesting, Anna added, looking directly at Zarathel. What was it like growing up knowing there were so many different worlds and peoples out there? The question struck Zarathel unexpectedly. She realized that despite growing up in a vast interstellar empire, her world had actually been quite small. Her education had been focused on imperial doctrine and her predetermined role. She had never been encouraged to wonder about the experiences of other species or to imagine different ways of organizing society. I think, she said slowly, that I have been living in a smaller universe than you have, despite all our technology and territory. As the evening progressed, Zarathel found herself sharing more about her own life than she had ever shared with anyone. She described the isolation of imperial leadership, the pressure of predetermined expectations, the loneliness of having every aspect of her existence planned by others. Maria listened with the same compassionate attention she might give a friend, while Anna asked probing questions about choice and freedom that forced Zarathel to examine assumptions she had never questioned. "Have you ever done something just because you wanted to?" Anna asked. "Not because it served the Empire or fulfilled your duties, but because it made you happy?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. Zarathel searched her memories and realized that she couldn't identify a single decision she had made based purely on personal desire. Every choice had been evaluated through the lens of imperial service and predetermined expectations. "I don't think I have," she admitted. "I'm not sure I would know how." "See, maybe that's something you could learn," Dr. Chen suggested gently. "Personal fulfillment doesn't diminish our ability to serve others. It often enhances it." That night, alone in the guest room the Chen family had prepared for her, Zarathel stared out the window at Earth's chaotic, beautiful sky. Stars that she had seen from dozens of conquered worlds looked different from this perspective. Not as markers of imperial territory, but as distant suns that might warm worlds full of beings with their own dreams, struggles, and possibilities. For the first time in her life, she allowed herself to imagine a different kind of existence. What would it be like to choose her own path? To explore the universe out of curiosity, rather than conquest. To form relationships based on mutual respect, rather than hierarchical obligation. The thoughts were terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. She opened a secure communication channel to the Dominion's edge, intending to file her daily report to her father. But as she composed her observations about human capabilities and vulnerabilities, the words felt hollow and inadequate. How could she reduce everything she was learning to tactical advantages and strategic assessments? Instead, she found herself writing something unprecedented in Imperial communication protocols. A personal reflection on the experience of encountering a genuinely different way of understanding existence. She described human resilience not as a military threat but as an inspiring example of finding meaning in difficulty. She analyzed their diversity not as a weakness to exploit but as a source of creative strength that had produced remarkable innovations. Before she could reconsider, she transmitted the report and prepared for what would certainly be a complicated response from her father. She was beginning to understand that her transformation was not something that could be hidden or ignored. The human encounter had changed something fundamental in her worldview, and there would be consequences for both herself and the empire she represented. As she drifted toward sleep in the quiet human dwelling, Zarathel realized that she was facing a choice that would define the rest of her existence. She could return to Velnari space and resume her predetermined role, carrying the knowledge of human potential like a hidden burden. Or she could find the courage to act on what she was learning. Regardless of the personal cost, the decision would have to wait for morning. But she already suspected which path her heart was choosing. The response from Emperor Kethvar arrived with the force of an imperial decree. Zarathel received the encrypted transmission in her quarters, aboard the Dominion's edge, as Earth rotated peacefully below. Her father's words carried the cold authority that had shaped galactic policy for 3 centuries. "Daughter, your reports indicate concerning deviation from mission parameters. These humans have clearly influenced your judgment through psychological manipulation tactics. You will terminate all surface contact immediately and return to Velnari space for debriefing and reassignment. The Conquest Fleet will handle future human interactions." The message continued with detailed instructions for extracting maximum intelligence value from her contact period, while minimizing further exposure to human influence. It concluded with a timeline for fleet deployment that would bring overwhelming force to bear against Earth within 6 standard cycles. Zarathel stared at the communication display, feeling the weight of 2 conflicting realities. One was the empire she had served faithfully for 2 centuries, a civilization that had brought order and prosperity to 12 star systems through superior technology and military discipline. The other was the complex, chaotic, beautiful world spinning below her, full of beings who had shown her possibilities she had never imagined. She thought of Anna Chen, the teenage girl who dreamed of exploring the universe and meeting alien species. Of Amara, the refugee who rebuilt hope from loss. of Dr. Chen himself, whose curiosity and compassion had opened doorways in her mind that could never be closed again. In 6 cycles, they would all face the might of the Velnari Imperial fleet, and their dreams would be crushed beneath the machinery of conquest. The decision crystallized with startling clarity. For the first time in her life, Princess Zarathel chose personal conviction over imperial obligation. She began with a message to Dr. Chen, transmitted through the diplomatic channels they had established. The communication was brief and urgent. Meet me at the original contact coordinates in 12 hours. Come alone. Critical information to share. Next, she accessed the Dominion's Edge command systems, using her Imperial authorization codes. Her tactical officer, Commander Withek, approached with obvious concern as she began downloading comprehensive files from the ship's intelligence database. Princess, these actions fall outside standard mission protocols. I must remind you that unauthorized data transfers constitute violations of Imperial security directives. Zarathel turned to face her old friend and trusted subordinate. Yithek had served her family for 50 years, had taught her combat tactics and strategic thinking, had been present at every significant moment of her military career. Yet now she saw him differently, not as a mentor, but as another product of a system that valued obedience over conscience. Yithek, in your 5 decades of service, have you ever questioned the righteousness of our actions? Have you ever wondered whether the species we conquer might have something valuable to offer the galaxy? The commander's expression remained carefully neutral, but Zarathel detected uncertainty in his bioluminescent patterns. Princess, such questions are not appropriate for military personnel. Our duty is to execute Imperial policy, not to evaluate its wisdom. But what if Imperial policy is wrong? What if our entire understanding of civilization and progress is flawed? Princess, Withek said carefully, I believe your exposure to human psychological manipulation techniques may be affecting your judgment. Perhaps you should consider returning to your quarters for rest and meditation. The conversation confirmed what Zarathel had already suspected. Even those closest to her were so thoroughly conditioned by Imperial doctrine that they could not conceive of legitimate alternatives. The responsibility for action fell entirely on her shoulders. Stand down, Commander. Return to your duties. I will handle this situation according to my best judgment as mission leader. 12 hours later, Zarathel met Dr. Chen at the coordinates where their first encounter had changed everything. She arrived in a small reconnaissance shuttle, leaving the Dominion's Edge under Commander Withek's temporary authority. As she docked with the human research vessel, she carried with her a data core containing intelligence that would either save or doom both their species. Dr. Chen greeted her with the same warm handshake, but she could see concern in his expression. Dr. Chen, what I'm about to tell you will change everything between our peoples. In 6 standard cycles, my father will arrive with a conquest fleet, carrying enough firepower to devastate your entire world. The preliminary contact mission was never intended to establish peaceful relations. It was reconnaissance for invasion. The human scientist's face went pale, but his voice remained steady. How long do we have to prepare? Bron, you cannot prepare, Zarathel said bluntly. Your technology is centuries behind ours. Your military forces would last perhaps minutes against Imperial weapons. But there might be another way. Important, Dodhard, she activated the data core, displaying holographic images of Velnari fleet compositions, weapon systems, and tactical doctrines. This contains everything your scientists need to understand what they're facing. More importantly, it contains information about Imperial psychology and decision-making processes. My father will expect quick capitulation when faced with overwhelming force. He has no experience with prolonged resistance or asymmetric warfare. WT. Dr. Chen studied the tactical displays with the same focused attention he had given to their cultural exchanges. You're giving us your own military secrets. This is treason against your empire. Yes, Zarathel replied simply. It is. Zarathel. 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 Rai. Why? What do you gain from this betrayal? The question hung between them like a bridge between two different concepts of loyalty. Zarathel had spent weeks among humans, learning to think in terms of individual conscience and personal responsibility. Now she tried to explain her choice in words that could bridge the gap between imperial duty and human ethics. I have learned something among your people that my civilization has forgotten. True strength does not come from the ability to impose your will on others. It comes from the courage to choose what is right, even when that choice costs you everything familiar and secure. Dr. Chen nodded slowly. And what do you believe is right in this situation? I believe that a universe with humans in it is better than a universe without them. I believe that diversity of thought and culture and possibility makes all of us stronger. I believe that conquest diminishes both the conqueror and the conquered. The next few hours were spent in intensive data transfer and strategic consultation. Dr. Chen's scientific training served him well as he absorbed technical information about imperial capabilities and translated it into terms that human military planners could understand. Zarathel found herself revealing not just tactical intelligence, but strategic insights into imperial psychology that could prove crucial for survival. Your best hope, she explained, lies not in direct confrontation, but in demonstrating that conquest of humanity would cost more than my father is prepared to pay. Imperial doctrine assumes that primitive species will either submit immediately or be quickly defeated. A prolonged resistance that inflicts significant costs, while offering opportunities for negotiated settlement, might force reconsideration. What kind of costs? Dr. Chen asked. Imperial fleets are designed for overwhelming single engagements, not sustained campaigns. If human resistance can survive the initial assault and force the extended conflict, logistics and political considerations may compel negotiation. They discussed human capabilities that might provide unexpected advantages. Humanity's diversity of thought and decentralized decision-making could make their responses unpredictable. Their emotional resilience and adaptability might allow them to continue functioning under conditions that would break more ordered civilizations. Most importantly, their capacity for innovation under pressure might produce solutions that imperial strategic planning could not anticipate. As their consultation neared its end, Dr. Chen asked the question Zarathel had been dreading. What happens to you when your father discovers what you've done? I will face the consequences of my choice, she replied. Imperial law is clear about the punishment for treason. But I have learned from humans that some things are worth any price. Come with us, Dr. Chen said suddenly. Request political asylum. Help us prepare for what's coming. You don't have to face this alone. The offer tempted her more than she cared to admit. The possibility of continued existence among beings who valued her individual thoughts and choices, who saw her as more than just a function of her imperial role, represented everything she had discovered during her transformation. Yet she knew that her value as a strategic asset would disappear the moment she defected. While her presence among the Imperial fleet might provide opportunities to minimize devastation. I must return, she said finally. My father will be suspicious if I don't deliver a convincing reconnaissance report. I may be able to influence Imperial strategy from within, perhaps find ways to limit the destruction. Dr. Chen grasped her hand with both of his, an intensely personal gesture that conveyed more than words could express. Whatever happens, you need to know that you've given humanity hope. You've shown us that even in the face of overwhelming odds, individuals can choose to stand for something larger than themselves. And you have shown me that existence has meaning beyond service to power, Zarathel replied. Whatever comes next, I will face it as someone who has chosen her own path. 3 cycles later, the Imperial fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of Earth's solar system. Emperor Kethvar commanded from the massive dreadnought Imperial Destiny, accompanied by 6 heavy cruisers and dozens of support vessels. The assembled force represented enough firepower to reduce a planet to rubble within hours. Zarathel stood at the Emperor's side on the command bridge, having delivered her reconnaissance report with carefully crafted misdirection. She had emphasized human technological limitations while downplaying their adaptive capabilities, suggested that quick application of force would ensure rapid surrender while omitting her observations about human psychological resilience. "Daughter, you have performed adequately," the Emperor declared, as the fleet assumed assault formation. "These humans will serve as an excellent example to other primitive species who might consider resistance to imperial expansion." As Earth appeared on the main display, Zarathel felt the weight of her transformation settle fully upon her shoulders. 3 weeks ago, she had viewed the blue-green world as another potential conquest. Now she saw it as the home of beings who had taught her the meaning of individual dignity, creative expression, and moral courage. The Emperor opened communication channels to Earth's governments, delivering the standard imperial ultimatum with casual arrogance. "Primitive species of the third planet, you are now within the sphere of the Velnari Empire. Submit to imperial authority and accept protectorate status, or face the consequences of resistance." Humanity's response came not from a single source but from dozens of world leaders, speaking in coordination yet maintaining their distinct voices. They acknowledged the vast technological disparity, recognized the terrible odds they faced, yet delivered a unified message of defiance that surprised even Zarathel with its eloquence and determination. "We thank you for demonstrating that we are not alone in the universe," came the reply from Earth. "We regret that your introduction comes with ultimatums, rather than opportunities for mutual understanding. Humanity chooses freedom over security, dignity over survival, hope over fear. We invite you to join us in exploring what our species might accomplish together. If you insist on conquest, you will discover that freedom is worth any price." Emperor Kethvar's response was swift and predictable. The fleet opened fire with weapons designed to cripple infrastructure while minimizing population casualties, a calculated demonstration of overwhelming power intended to break human morale before serious resistance could organize. But something unexpected happened. Instead of immediate surrender or chaotic collapse, humanity's response demonstrated exactly the qualities Zarathel had tried to describe to Dr. Chen. Emergency networks activated with remarkable efficiency. Decentralized leadership structures adapted rapidly to changing conditions. Military forces that should have been overwhelmed began implementing asymmetric tactics that forced the Imperial fleet to respond to threats they had never encountered. Most importantly, human creativity under pressure produced innovations that Imperial tactical computers could not predict. Improvised weapons systems that turned civilian technology into military assets. Communication networks that functioned despite targeted electromagnetic disruption. Civilian populations that supported military resistance through organized non-cooperation that mystified Imperial administrators. As the hours passed and human resistance continued to function despite punishing attacks, Zarathel watched her father's confidence gradually transform into frustrated anger. Imperial doctrine had no provision for extended campaigns against technologically inferior opponents who refused to accept logical defeat. "These creatures are acting irrationally," the Emperor declared after the third day of unexpectedly effective resistance. "They cannot hope to defeat us militarily, yet they continue to fight. What psychological defect drives such behavior?" "Driver," Zarathel saw her opportunity. "Father, my study of human psychology suggests that their resistance stems from cultural values rather than tactical calculation. They appear to believe that their manner of facing defeat is more important than avoiding defeat itself. Absurd. No rational species would choose destruction over submission to superior force. Perhaps, Father, we are dealing with a fundamentally irrational species. Such beings might prove more trouble as imperial subjects than their value warrants. The resources required to maintain control over such psychologically unstable populations could exceed the benefits of conquest. It was a careful manipulation, using imperial prejudices about emotional species to suggest that humans might not be worth the effort of subjugation. Zarathel watched her father process the implications, calculating costs and benefits with the cold logic that had built an empire. On the seventh day of conflict, as human resistance adapted yet again to imperial tactics, and began inflicting significant casualties on Imperial forces. Emperor Kethvar made an unprecedented decision. Rather than escalate to planet-killing weapons, he opened negotiation channels with human leadership. The resulting talks, mediated by Zarathel's carefully neutral translation, established humanity as an autonomous protectorate rather than conquered territory. Earth would remain under human governance while acknowledging imperial supremacy in interstellar affairs. In exchange, humanity would provide scientific research and cultural exchange that might benefit the Empire. It was not the outcome anyone had expected, but it represented survival for humanity and a new model for imperial expansion that relied on cooperation rather than conquest. Months later, as the first permanent diplomatic station was established in Earth orbit, Zarathel found herself serving as the imperial ambassador to humanity. It was a role that allowed her to continue the transformation that had begun with a simple handshake in space. Standing in her office aboard the orbital station, she looked down at Earth's chaotic, beautiful surface and reflected on how completely her understanding of existence had changed. She had begun this mission as a dutiful imperial princess, viewing the universe through the lens of predetermined hierarchy and cosmic order. She had discovered instead that the universe was far more complex, more beautiful, and more meaningful than any empire could comprehend. Humans had taught her that individuals could choose their own purposes, that diversity strengthened rather than weakened civilization, that hope and dignity were worth any price. Dr. Chen visited the station regularly as part of the ongoing cultural exchange program. During one of their conversations, he asked her a question that crystallized everything she had learned. "Do you ever regret the choice you made? Giving up the certainty of imperial life for all this complexity and uncertainty?" Zarathel considered the question carefully, thinking about everything she had gained and lost through her transformation. She had sacrificed the security of predetermined purpose, the comfort of unquestioned loyalty, the simple clarity of imperial doctrine. In return, she had gained the exhilarating terror of choosing her own path, the profound satisfaction of relationships based on mutual respect rather than hierarchical obligation, and the deep meaning that came from standing for principles larger than personal advantage. "Dr. Chen," she replied, "I have learned that the most important question is not whether we make the right choices, but whether we choose to make choices at all. Freedom is terrifying and wonderful and utterly necessary. I would not trade it for any amount of imperial certainty." As Earth turned beneath the station and stars wheeled overhead in their ancient patterns, Zarathel understood that her transformation was ongoing. Each day brought new opportunities to choose compassion over convenience, growth over security, hope over fear. The human encounter had not simply changed her life, it had taught her how to live. The galaxy was vast and full of possibilities neither empire nor species had yet imagined. For the first time in her existence, Zarathel looked forward to discovering them as an individual who had chosen her own purpose among the stars.